Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first item on the agenda is citizen input. Any topic that's not on the agenda. So first request, Greg Bryant, you've got your blue page right here.
Can you hear me? Okay. Greg Bryant from Deschutes-Burr Woods. I am representing the Deschutes-Burr Woods Neighborhood Association, and this is pertaining to the placement of the homeless next to the Les Schwab in South Bend. From my understanding, there has been no public discussion on this specific site. We also have China Hat with the homeless out there, and now we're going to have at the crossroads of 97 and Murphy. We're getting a lot of affordable housing and apartments along 97 in the south there also. So in other words, if you can't put some of it, we'd like to see putting the homeless in maybe all four quadrants of the city, because right now you're sticking them all in the south, and we don't think it's fair.
Recording in progress.
Huh?
Oh, it just said the meeting's being recorded.
Yeah, in other words, you should put some in the northwest and northeast, southwest and southeast. In other words, what we're looking at is everyone has, that way everybody has the benefit of having the homeless people in their area. Okay? Nobody wants to have them next to them, but I can see that the homeless need a place to be and to stay and to feel wanted and to be safe. We need to ask the homeless their needs and not keep moving them around. Because right now, that's the problem we have, is we keep on moving them around, and we got to stop that. But I'm also saying that, we in the south or in the east can't keep on taking these people. I mean, that's not right. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryant.
Thank you for coming in today.
Any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
I have some thoughts to share back after we hear any other comments about.
All right. Great, still stay tuned. So Ed, Muir, is it?
Muir, yeah.
Muir, okay.
Good morning, and thanks for having this. My name is Ed Muir. I live in Southwest Bend, not too far from Murphy Road in 97. My biggest issue is not that we are not going to have these camps. I understand that's sort of inevitable. The question is how you run the camps and how you organize the camps. And the biggest issues we have is security and accountability. If you have a camp in that area with 10 tent sites and 20 RV sites, you've got about 50 people, I imagine, on 1 acre. Basically, you're moving the Hunnell Road problem down to Southwest Bend or South Bend. And so unless there's active management of the campsite and unless there's some kind of accountability of the people who come in there, I think you're just creating another Hunnell Road situation where there had been over 200 calls and 33 arrests and guns and drug busts and the rest. And you're just moving that problem to the south of Bend. So without security and accountability and management of the campsite, this is just another debacle waiting to happen. It's Hunnell Road South. And I think the way it's stated from what the city council said, that people can do drugs on site, there's no management on site. They haven't picked out a service provider yet. And so this is ready, aim, shoot as far as I'm concerned. They are not prepared to move these Hunnell Road people down south. And this campsite is not going to be set up. Also, just as an aside, my wife did a survey of 25 businesses in the south. there was only 1 out of 25 businesses that actually were aware of this campsite about to happen, including Les Schwab, and including the credit union down there, including Albertsons. None of the people knew about this. So if there was some community outreach that has not been done properly, and this is definitely going to affect the businesses down there, they already have problems. This will just exacerbate the problems. That's my testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muir.
Thank you for coming in this morning.
Is there anybody in the room looking to testify under citizen input? If not, online, we may have some folks. So yeah, online, please use the raised hand feature and we'll bring you into this meeting as a participant. So please proceed. You mentioned Lacey something?
Lacey and Jenny.
So you'll be joining us in this meeting, and then you can unmute yourself for a testimony. Lacey was mentioned first. Yeah, so we're just working with the technology here today. So when you transfer from a attendant to a participant, there may be a little delay. So go ahead and mention the name and I'll call them out if possible. Lacey for citizen input, or Jenny.
Can you guys hear me?
There we go, yes. So this is Jenny.
I've been closely following this homeless situation in City of Bend for over a year, performed a lot of research. I request that Deschutes County hold the City of Bend accountable for its lack of responsible planning, thoughtful prioritization, solid budgeting, and widespread care for its Bend residents and businesses. Bend residents are not well protected by the City of Bend. For over 2 years, the Bend community has been in an outcry, especially regarding Hunnell Road, and asked the city for real help with the public health and safety issues. Hunnell Road businesses and residents have greatly suffered, and this pilot program is moving the nightmare from Hunnell Road to somewhere else. The City of Bend's position is disingenuous, and it's false, the city, to claim they don't have resources or funds to handle Hunnell Road and fund on-site management and full-time security within this pilot program. Yes, the City of Bend has massive pet projects such as a hydro plant, City Hall relocation and its expansion, Juniper Ridge Public Works campuses, and Hawthorne Pedestrian Bridge that under 5% of the community will use for biking and walking and not for cars. That's hundreds of millions of dollars of massive projects, but they can't fund security. It makes no sense. The City of Bend has known for over 12 months that Hunnell Road needed to be addressed for county road improvements. So why hasn't the City of Bend prioritized this Hunnell Road clearing? Instead, the City of Bend earmarked $35 million to $40 million on homeless efforts in the past 18 months with minimal results, and the chaos and conditions have worsened. If the city had properly handled Hunnell Road, then the public health emergency would be less of an issue and the county would not need to step in. This is a sham deal created by the city, and they're shifting financial and physical responsibility to the county to cover and be liable for where the city mishandled the homeless situation, including Hunnell Road. I implore you to reject this pilot program unless there's a proper plan that includes on-site management and full-time security. The City of Bend residents need to be adequately protected, please. They changed our homeless shelter codes to permanently not include security across the entire town. Minimal buffers only for homeless camping are allowed to camp anywhere except for not near shelters, homeless shelters, or the river. We have minimal protection standards here in our permanent codes. Again, the city of Bend residents need to be adequately protected. County commissioners, I am like begging you, please protect Bend residents because of the city of Bend doesn't.
Could you provide your full name for the record, please?
Jennifer Lingard.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there anybody else with the raised hand feature online? So there was a Lacey had a hand raised but not available or not testifying. Okay, so has anybody joined us in the room for a testimony on citizen input today? Seeing none, I want to thank everybody to be engaged. Commissioner Chang, did you?
I'll go last if
Yeah.
either of you have comments you'd like to share.
Oh, I'd love to go last.
Well, if there's comments from the board.
Yeah.
Thank everyone for their input and sharing their concerns and their questions about what is going to be happening in the aftermath of the clearing of Hunnell Road. The most important thing I want to emphasize to people is that the managed camp proposals that we are looking at are different from Hunnell Road. Hunnell Road is an unauthorized, unplanned, unmanaged encampment. What we are talking about is a managed site that has rules of conduct, that has screening, that has management, that has fencing that will be, with a gate that will be open at a certain point in the morning and close at a certain point in the night. No one will come in and no one will go out during that time, unless there's an emergency, of course. But in that time when the gates are closed. So we do not have a managed camp in Deschutes County or in Central Oregon to point to kind of as an example for people to understand what we're talking about here. One of the best examples that I can think of is down in Southwest Oregon, in the city of Medford. It's called, really original name, Medford Urban Campground Number 1. But facilities like this are intended to provide a stepping stone out of homelessness for those who are ready to proceed out of homelessness, to take those steps. People who are not ready to take those steps out of homelessness will not be authorized to relocate to a managed camp location. This is not unregulated free-for-all chaos. This is a filtered, managed, supported process. Specifically on Murphy, Murphy is the Murphy Road site is one of multiple sites where we are exploring managed camp or safe parking. One, I'd guess that maybe 25 or 30 people could be safely supported there. Not the 80 to 100 people that are at Hunnell Road right now. We will need multiple sites, and the county with the city are exploring multiple locations for a managed camp. In advance of the Hunnell Road process, I had gotten the impression from the city that the concept at Murphy had been explored with the neighborhood, and it clearly has been explored less than I had the impression it's been explored. But we will address that as we continue to explore this option. I can assure people that if the county is responsible for holding the contract for the operation of a managed camp, I will not support us moving forward with a contract that does not have those basic provisions that I mentioned: rules of conduct, screening, fencing that, with a gate that is open and closed at certain points in time, and intensive management and the supportive services that people need to progress out of homelessness. That's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dare.
Yes, I'm really appreciative of hearing from the community, and at our meeting on Monday, I repeated the word security several times. As you're all aware, there were over 200 calls to Hunnell Road. The drug enforcement team is arresting people from Bend. You know, it's not on a daily basis, but it's definitely on a weekly basis. We have a tremendous problem in our country. We have a fentanyl overdose crisis. I just saw this morning a mom who had lost 2 sons at the same time to fentanyl overdose. And I'm like, when are we going to do something? So, no, do I want to put people in the south end of Bend that aren't following rules, and we're providing security and we're doing management? And I can understand it does feel incredibly unfair if you live down there, because a lot of people have joined that community, and I don't want to add more problems at the south end of Bend. I was told Monday that we would prioritize who was able to move there. Apparently, there's some incredibly vulnerable people that are living on Hunnell Road. And if that is truly the case, then definitely they should be allowed to go there. But to bring other issues to the community, crime, no rules, no, that's not what I'm hoping the commissioners can bring to the equation. I was happy to see that the safe parking program in Bend now has 12 participants instead of 8. But honestly, safe parking is a program that I'm hoping will be attacked with the same vigor in Bend as it is in Redmond. Pastor Rick in Redmond is really trying to get those people that are homeless, that don't want to be homeless. Let's get them back into society. So, and I want to also commend our Veterans Village and what a great job it's doing. If you're not aware, the Veterans Village only has 15 cabins, and there's a reason why it only has 15. We were clearly told in September of 2020, you don't want to go over 15 because personality issues happen. And by keeping it managed at that number, our veterans are being able to re-engage back to permanent housing. It's been remarkable. So let's look at the village and what they've done, and look at the fact that we need rules wherever we go, and people have to be respected on both sides. So that's my message for the morning, and I do thank everyone who really cares. I do believe that security is important for the people that live in that park, the unmanaged camp, and that live outside. And, if we don't bring that, we're not doing our job. And of course, really, substance use disorder and mental illness are at the top of a lot of people that are homeless. And that's why a couple years ago, I asked for Deer Ridge to be open so that we quit putting a Band-Aid on it, and the majority of people that need serious help can get it. Hopefully, just heard from our lobbyists this morning that the cities are trying to make it, if you are told to sign up for drug help, this is their legislation. If you're told to sign up for drug rehab and you don't fulfill that obligation, then you're in trouble. So we have to do something differently with Measure 110, and perhaps this legislation will pass. The cities are promoting it. But, we've got a disconnect. So we've got the drug users, and then we've got the people that really do need the help, and let's get them, let's get a warm hand around them and get them back to where they need to go, and perhaps their family.
So just a couple thoughts. Let's think about the vision here. When people hear information, your brain kind of goes to the fact that, we don't want to move Hunnell down to a different location. We're talking about medically fragile people that are looking for help, people that probably want a better situation. The real struggling troublemaker types, they're not going to be told what to do, and they're not even going to go there anyway. So we're not taking the most troubled people and forcing anybody to go anywhere. We're offering a safe, supportive environment. We referring to the community we at this point, because this is a really interesting dynamic. We had a meeting on Monday. City of Bend comes to the county commission work session, and they're like, we have a great idea. How about you manage this camp in our city here? And now we're talking about it here today at our meeting, which is fine. Words really matter. We got to be real careful with words. The word aftermath of Hunnell was just mentioned. I mean, that already puts visions in somebody's mind when we're using the word aftermath. So think about this. We want to move forward in a very public, supportive environment to make this more positive than it is. Let's not go backwards. Let's not, and it's a struggle. It's a struggle for everybody. Medically fragile folks, they're out there. So if we're offering a location for 20 or 30 people, and I do support the concept that these should not be too dense. 15 was the magic number that was mentioned to us. Once you get past that, you can have factions and people, conflicting in a small area. But yeah, medically fragile, people that want to move forward, people that are looking for safety and stability. Just some of the thoughts going into this, as I say, it's the great unknown. We haven't done this before. I go back to our state land use system where we don't put people outside of cities. We put people inside of cities. We've seen how the city council has just been wrapped up in this for years. How many times did they point to something on a map and try to put something somewhere? People just explode, which is fine. That's what everybody's opinion matters in this situation. So I guess, the conclusion for today is let's work together. Let's be careful with the words we use. We know we're offering support for medically fragile people that want to move forward, and it doesn't have to be a really negative situation. So this is our citizen input with commissioner response this morning. Anything else? So thank you very much. I know that everybody's following this real close. At this time, we'll move to the consent agenda. Oh, sure. Oh, okay, so no, at this time, let's use that for another future meeting. I mean, so this was the moment of citizen input, commissioners' comments. Let's not go backwards at this time. So yeah, she can contact us directly or join us in the next meeting. So at this time, consent agenda.
So move consent agenda.
Second.
So with the minutes, just a couple slight misspelling type things, very non-substantive, so I'm going to give those to the staff. So with that acknowledgement, any other discussion?
I'm supportive of the lease with DQ, item number 1. I just want to note for staff, it would be really helpful for a county admin to let both the county forester and the solid waste management team know that this air quality monitoring station is right there at the road department, because the data that monitoring station is collecting could be of great value and use for various purposes to both of those departments. And they may already know about it, but for example, for dealing with some of the prescribed fire smoke issues that we've been dealing with, I didn't know that there was an air quality monitoring station right out there at Rhodes. So feeding that information to key department heads would be really helpful.
I'll make sure that they're aware of that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just an internal reminder that we're hosting it. That's fine. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. At this time, we're going to item number 7, 8, 9, and 10, I think. They're all kind of going to roll together. We're going to reconvene. We're going to convene as the 911, reconvene as Deschutes County Board of Commissioners for these multiple items. And with that, who's going to kick us off?
Hello, Commissioners. Dave Doyle, County Legal Counsel. Mr. Doty, Chris Doty, Director of the Road Department's here as well. And I'll let him get into the substance of what it is we're going to do. But in essence, we're going to be asking the board, both as the county governing body and the 911 service district governing body, to approve an intergovernmental agreement creating the Deschutes County Road Agency, and then follow that up with 2 ordinances, again, one from the county and one from Deschutes County 911, confirming the creation of this intergovernmental entity. And then finally, there's a resolution from the finance folks creating a new fund that would acknowledge this new entity and increasing appropriations associated with that. So before we get into those, I suppose maybe Mr. Doty can give you a little background as to why we're doing what we're doing.
So, backstory. Deschutes County receives federal funding from two primary sources, PILT, Payment in Lieu of Taxes, SRS, Secure Rural Schools. PILT, as a reminder, is the federal payment to counties to account for the fact that federal lands cannot be taxed, and therefore the 80% of land in Deschutes County is untaxable. PILT program has been established to provide a small offset to the loss in local government revenue due to that. SRS, on the other hand, is a federal payment to counties and school districts to offset the loss in timber revenues from federal land that is no longer producing timber revenue, mostly due to environmental restrictions, whereas timber revenue has been a pretty big, important funding source for county road departments and to a lesser degree school districts dating back to the early 1900s. In a unique commingling of methodologies at the federal government, they've tied the two programs together such that our maximum entitled PILT payment annually is debited from that. The Secure Rural Schools funding that we receive is debited from that. And so has the effect, these two methodologies, even though they're two distinct programs, nullifying the impact of Secure Rural Schools because it comes out of the PILT funding. In 2021, the legislature passed House Bill 2174 to allow counties to direct the state to send SRS revenue to a lawfully established intergovernmental entity, and that's what we're here today to create. Once received in the entity, SRS funds, the county is then able to achieve its maximum allowable payment in lieu of taxes amount from the federal government. So has the impact of basically separating those two instead of tying them together. So that's what we're here to do, is to form the intergovernmental entity, which is, as Dave mentioned, is formed when two local governments enter into an IGA. Due to the fact that the geographical boundary of this IGA is the county, and cities, of course, reside within the county, and the fact that it's related to transportation, state law requires us to achieve approval of a majority of the cities in the county before we enact this intergovernmental entity. We've done that. The cities of Redmond, Lapine, and Sisters have passed resolutions in support of the IGA. So before you is the IGA and other documents, as Dave mentioned, with the 911 Services District. And the reason that district was selected is we need another local government to partner with, just in terms of convenience and the fact that we're on a very tight schedule and meeting some deadlines here. 911 lent itself to be the most convenient way to establish this efficiently. Y'all are the board of both entities, so we can get it done quickly. Historically, PILT revenue has been distributed to the road department, to natural resources as well, in addition to the county general fund. And so with that, are there any questions?
So just big picture, so the state of Oregon led this opportunity, as in the feds have these programs, they calculate it, state of Oregon basically set up this opportunity for us.
That's correct. In certain scenarios, and doesn't apply to all counties, where you have large federal land holdings that have historically produced timber, and that's not the case everywhere. In that situation, the county is penalized, whereas this statute, or excuse me, the legislature passed the House bill, changed state law to allow creation of a separate entity to receive our SRS funds. Those funds will be brought back into county expenditure just like they are today, and so there'll be no change in any level of service associated with that.
And then historically, Deschutes County qualifies pretty big. I don't know how to say that, but we qualify pretty well in these programs because of percentage of public land and population.
That's correct.
So there's some rural counties that have lots of public land but not a lot of population, and we just happen to have both of them. So then it's a pretty big amount, serious money.
Yeah, so we have a $4 million PILT maximum allotment and about an $800,000 Secure Rural Schools allotment as well. So And again, all because of the amount of federal land and the historical nature of how we've been able to improve our road system and maintain it from the resources off of some of that land.
Important to note that the Secure Rural Schools is driven by past timber receipts in a couple of decade period. So it's not just total amount of public land and population. It's about timber harvest in I can't remember exactly which decades it was, but it's like 2 decades that's tied to.
Do you remember, Chris, when it was? I mean, remember when we used to log things and not burn them? So I'm just wondering, I know the Kinzu Mill in Hepner went out, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Basically the years when they liquidated almost all of the old growth from our national forests in the 1970s, 80s.
To put it in perspective, I believe we used to receive upwards of $3 to $4 million annually from SRS, and that's $800,000 based on the locked-in formulaic methodology that the federal government has dating back to that window. So I think we're still a net loser in the grand scheme of things, especially considering inflation over the past couple decades. But this certainly allows us to gain some of that back.
Or a gainer, because we don't have the large old growth trees anymore, so that's a relative point, yeah.
I mean, I
can see that. There's two sides of that.
To unpack that a little bit more, I mean, there's nothing with that kind of value in the forest anymore at this point. So basing our SRS payments off of an era when there was still very large tree logging is kind of a good deal for us because, nowadays the trees that need to be removed from the forest, you don't actually make money. You actually have to spend money to get them out of there. This sounds like a great opportunity for us to get the full benefits of Secure Rural Schools and PILT. My one question is, how are other counties that are pursuing this structuring their intergovernmental agency?
We basically modeled this right after what Jefferson County did, down to the name. And so, it was a unique program. The state, doesn't quite know what to do with everything yet, but we've basically modeled, the process after what Jeffco's done. We believe we have the authorization from the state that this is the proper way to execute what was identified in House Bill 2174. We will be receiving SRS funds here in the next probably month or so, and once we establish this, it will go into this entity such that when the state reports what Deschutes County received, be zero in SRS, that will come back in PILT, not this next budget cycle, but the one after that.
And these are both programs that need to be reauthorized by Congress. They're not permanent programs, so I know that every few years it gets real exciting if they're going to be funded or not.
That's correct, yeah.
So one other note, I did attend the City of La Pine City Council and explain it to the councilors, just kind of being at the table in partnership, explaining why we were asking for their engagement in this also. So that was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, cities have been very supportive.
So with that background, we're going to do, as I say, the business of convening and reconvening. Is there any other discussion or questions or a motion?
The first item before you, Commissioners, would be number 7, which is approval of the IGA in your capacity as governing body for Deschutes County.
So I move approval of signature of IGA number 2023-131.
Second.
So yeah, I'm looking at the agenda. I'm looking at the document number. Is that what we have here? So I'm looking at document 2023-131. Is that what
That's
that
what
was?
I said.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just trying to stay organized here. So, and then we're naming it at this point also, Deschutes County Road Agency. That's the name of this, the entity. Okay, any other discussion? Now I'm on the same page too. Any other discussion? And you seconded it? So, without anything else, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. Okay.
Now we would ask that you convene as the governing body for the 911 Service District and take up both approval of the intergovernmental agreement as you just did, which has the same document number, 2023-131, and then following that, open a public hearing to consider ordinance 2023-006.
So at this time, we will convene as the Deschutes County 911 Service District Board. This is item number 8. With the discussion, it would be the same information, different side of the table. Is there any questions or a motion?
As the Deschutes County 911 Service District Board, I move approval and signature of IGA number 2023-131.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. So at this time, this is a public hearing as our Deschutes County 911 Service District proposing adoption by emergency of ordinance ratifying the creation of this intergovernmental entity known as Deschutes County Road Agency. Is there anyone here to testify on this matter? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone online? A raised hand feature. Final call for a testimony on this matter. So seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this matter, and then we have some proposed motions. Was there any other discussion?
No.
I can move first and second reading, including emergency adoption by title only of ordinance number 2023-006.
And I will second the motion.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. So this is the first and second reading of ordinance number 2023-006, an ordinance ratifying the creation of an intergovernmental entity known as the Deschutes County Road Agency and declaring an emergency.
Now, I believe, do we need to move adoption of the ordinance?
So I'll just acknowledge declaring an emergency just basically removes a 90-day window of when it goes into effect.
Correct.
So now I'll move adoption of ordinance number 2023-006.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes.
Now, at this point, we'd ask that you reconvene as the governing body of Deschutes County and take up item number 10, which is a public hearing, consider adoption by emergency of ordinance 2023-005.
So at this time, this is the public hearing on this matter for ordinance number 2023-005. Is there anyone?
Sorry, have you reconvened as the governing body
Nope.
for Deschutes?
Thank you very much. At this time, we will reconvene as the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners, going back to our original entity here. And now it's a public hearing for proposing adopting ordinance number 2023-005. Is there anybody asking to testify in this matter? Is there anyone online? I see none. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing on this matter. This is just the mirror of what we've just did as the 911 body. Is there a motion?
Move adoption by emergency of ordinance number 2023-005. Oh, excuse me,
First and
by
second.
title only. Sorry. Yes. Move first and second reading, including emergency adoption by title only of ordinance number 2023-005.
Second.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. So as the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners, this is first and second reading of ordinance number 2023-005, an ordinance ratifying the creation of an intergovernmental entity known as the Deschutes County Road Agency and declaring an emergency.
With that, I'll move adoption of ordinance number 2023-005.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Then chair votes yes.
And the
1, 2,
final-
3, 4.
Final, well, there's one more final item.
Nope.
That's consideration of Resolution 2023-008, creating a new fund and increasing appropriations within the 2022-2023 Deschutes County budget. I don't know if Dan is here or not from Finance. I don't see him. So you'll have to just take my word on it. But the resolution is there for your consideration. It essentially creates the process for receipting in and expending out the projected $800,000 of SRS dollars that this entity would be receiving.
And acknowledging that this basically is the expected amount this fiscal year, no other revenue at this time, but this will be valuable in the future with congressional authorization of these funds.
That's correct.
So we're doing this as the Board of Commissioners, creating a new fund in the Deschutes County's budget for this fiscal year.
Move approval and board signature of resolution number 2023-008.
Second it?
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And chair votes yes.
Thank
Now
you
we're
very much.
completed. Okay, thank you.
So a lot of teamwork involved
Yes.
in getting you here, and thank you for running the gauntlet, so we're off and running.
Well, that went very smooth. I mean, that is creating a little, the IGA amongst ourselves here, but a great project, putting it together and letting the world know about it too. Thank you.
But thank you for pointing out that we're still at least 2.2 million short of what we were receiving, correct? You said it was 3 to 4 million before.
Yeah. The good old days.
Yeah, the good old days.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
At this time, item number 12, Tiny Watt Solar Economic Development Loan Request. Thank you very much, Steve Curley, for joining us.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Curley, Director of Redmond Economic Development. Thank you for your time this morning. Coming back to bring some...
Jen wanted to just do an introduction too, real quick.
See you there. Snuck in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager. We're just coming back before you. We were here on January 23rd with Tiny Watt Solar for an economic development loan request, and we're just coming back for clarification. At that time, we mentioned the part of the package was that Tiny Watt Solar was requesting 6 new jobs, bringing to the Redmond area, and we want to clarify that those 6 new jobs have already been brought to the Redmond area starting in April of 2022. So there's kind of a timeline in the report of when those jobs were brought here. And so I'll turn it over to Steve to give any further clarification and answer any questions you have about that. But they are requesting the loan for the 6 jobs that are currently at Tiny Watt Solar.
Thanks, Jen. So I want to go back to help bring clarification to look at what the fund was designed for. And the fund was established to assist with business retention or relocation. And so that could be expenses related to costs of moving business equipment, furnishings, personal business property, et cetera, or short-term rent relief in the business new location. And I think where the clarification comes is when we met with Tiny Watt Solar, it was back in March of 2022. And they were not here yet. They were on their way from the Portland area. At the time, they were looking potentially at 5 jobs that they would be bringing to the region. We created the application right after that in April of 2022. At the time, when the committee, as you know, there's a committee of 3 or 4 folks that have background in business, financials, that meet with them to make sure that if the public funds are given, that they're going to be responsible and be able to utilize them, and that the public dollars are being spent wisely. So that committee met with Tiny Watt Solar, bless you, at the time that they weren't quite ready for the funds. So we said, okay, here's some things to work on over the next 6 months or so. The committee went back and met with them in November of 2022. At the time, they had achieved the milestones that the committee had put before them, and at that time, they approved or not approved, but said, let's move forward with requesting the loan funds. At that time, by that time, they had also had a sixth person they wanted to add. So instead of 5, they were actually creating 6 jobs. And then we came before the commission in January. So a little bit unusual. Most of the time, there's not a waiting period, if you will, while the company was, making sure that they were going to get their feet underneath them. That's, I think, part of what created the confusion of how many jobs and why and when that was going to happen. So happy to provide that clarification and answer any questions.
So yeah, you and I were in a discussion about this, like, we approved it, but then were we clear about what we did when we did it? So it's good that we just take a moment and acknowledge where we're at here. As to say, the disconnect I would have not known or seen is the principles of the company were part of the employment base that we were funding. So that was kind of like, oh yeah, I guess I did not understand that when we talked before. But I'm supportive of this company. It's very exciting seeing them come to our town. I saw them at the Pub Talk last fall, I think. And yeah, we'll go from there. So any thoughts?
I'm supportive of issuing a forgivable loan in the amount of $12,000 for relocation and adding jobs in the region. My one concern is about whether the way that this is playing out is equitable to other businesses that have relocated here. So I mean, are we offering $2,000 per job to this company in a way that we could have offered $2,000 per job to other companies that have relocated here recently that didn't get that benefit? And are we setting kind of a new precedent for the way that we, count and time things for future loan applications? If we're setting a new precedent for future loan applications, that I'm comfortable with that too. But I don't want us to be unfair to prior loan applicants.
Right. Could I respond?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I don't think we're setting a new precedent. This loan fund, was intended to be flexible to help in economic development. And while I don't have a history of it being used to relocate companies here, I'm sure that it has. I can't give you specific examples anyway. So that was part of the intention of the loan fund at the beginning. So I don't know that there would have been anyone sort of left out, so to speak, in the way you characterize that could have received funds. Yeah. As EDCO staff and directors, we actively, try to deploy, these incentives and resources when we can. I think there was a 2-year period where it was, a bit of a drought, and now I think we're going to see more requests coming. And it continues, the companies looking at Central Oregon, and, obviously I represent Redmond specifically, is very active. So I do believe that we will see more loan requests potentially related to relocation as well as business expansion. So I don't think there's an equity problem there. I think this was always part of what the loan fund was intended to do. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Commissioner?
Well, interesting situation. So I'm glad that you've come back in front of us, Steve, to clarify exactly what it was that originally the husband and wife were considered part of the 6, but they actually added more people. And did it really go retro then to April 22 that they had 6 employees on top of that?
So when they first came here, they had hired an employee from the Portland area. So really there were 3 of them. There was the husband and wife and the first employee they hired in Portland. They came over in the late March timeframe. Shortly after that, they hired employee number 4 I believe it was in April. I could look on my timeline. And then more recently, they hired employees 5 and 6. And they were hoping to, and they would like to use these funds to help support the hiring of those 2 new employees. The reason they didn't wait to hire those 2 employees is, and in fact, they were only going to hire 1, but they found 2 qualified. And as we all know, it's a very tight labor market. And so they said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and hire these people because we don't want to lose them. And so they went ahead and hired them here in January, I believe. And so those are very recent hires that sort of were, I don't want to say caught, but kind of in the flow of the timeline of the application or appearing before you and hopefully receiving approval. Does that help?
That helps.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my thought is, we do have the due diligence committee, the efforts of EDCO and the folks that, kind of review this whole process and before we would even see it. Taking a look at financials even internally sometimes, where we don't want to do that here in this public meeting. But I'm real excited. This is true traded sector, national and international, from what I heard at the pub talk even. So it's great that we were able to, get real clear on this, the fact that, we are offering this forgivable loan for those first 6 employees. But yeah, hopefully it's going to be a grant 2 years from now, and we're going to see them grow beyond this also.
That's the hope, and they're on a trajectory to do that, so that's exciting.
So do we need a motion then today?
I think so, just for clarity is
Okay.
what we're doing here, yep.
So I approve to grant a loan of $12,000. That includes creating 6 new jobs in Redmond, retroactive to April of '22.
Was that a motion?
It was.
I will second the motion.
Great. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much. We got clarity on that one.
Thanks, Commissioners, I appreciate it.
Item number 13, general administrative policy revisions. So this is administrative policy. Oh, revisions to the revisions? Oh, redlining version? I see, okay, yeah. So these aren't revisions to the revisions, they're just highlighted. Okay,
These are in red.
yep.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Stephanie Robinson, Grants and Operations Specialist. I'm here today requesting consideration and approval of the revised Deschutes County General Administrative Policies 12, 13, and 16. So following a compliance and audit review in the fall of 2022, ODOT recommended that the county update its ADA, Title VI, and record retention policies to align with state and federal public transit program requirements. So in General Administrative Policy 12, the revision is that Deschutes County currently follows the county and special district retention schedule for record retention, and that will continue. But specific to STIF funds, it was recommended to implement and reflect a different record retention procedure in alignment with a different OAR rule. In General Administrative Policy 13, it was recommended to adopt a combined Title VI and ADA compliant form or complaint form to clearly designate the potential categories upon which the discrimination complaint is filed. So in General Administrative Policy 13, there was no form prior, so the policy was updated to include language about how to use the form, and the newly created combined form was added. And then in General Administrative Policy 16, there was an existing form which was replaced with a combined form.
Great. So this is, aligning with words that come down from the feds and alignment through ODOT and to our administrative policy language.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So I see for GA 12 that, essentially this is, we're making these changes because we are the entity we're the funnel that STIF funds pass through. I mean, and if we weren't the entity that STIF funds pass through, then we wouldn't have to worry about at least this one policy change, or?
Do you know, Eric?
Whitney's sort of nodding a little bit.
The change that's being requested by ODOT, our policy points to the OARs related to records retention for counties. There's a separate OAR related to STIF funds. And so really we're just amending the policy to also point to that other OAR for STIF funds.
Okay. Thank you.
So very much kind of a housekeeping coordination item here. Is there a motion for approval?
I move approval of recommended revisions to Deschutes County General Administrative Policies 12, 13, and 16.
I'll second it. Are we allowed to do them all together? Yes. Okay.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item number 14, consideration of a notice of an intent to award contract. Cody Smith, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. For the record, Cody Smith, County Engineer, Deschutes County Road Department. Road Department prepared solicitation documents for the supply and delivery of crushed uncoated chip seal aggregate. This work includes crushing, delivering and stockpiling aggregates for our 2023 chip seal program at various locations around Deschutes County. Our chip seal program this year is going to include roughly 71 miles of chip seal on county roads, and additionally some chip seal work we'll be performing for the cities of Redmond and Sisters. At last week's Wednesday board meeting, the board approved the notice of intent to award for the asphalt oil materials for this work. So this week this is for the rock that will actually be applied. That's kind of our two main ingredients there for our chip seal. The department received an open bids for the chip seal aggregate on February 15th, 2023. 2 bids were received. Before you this morning is a notice of intent to award contract to Taylor Northwest LLC in the amount of $331,886. As always, publishing of the notice of intent to award will begin a 1-week protest period for parties to protest award of the contract. If no protests are received during that period, the contract will be awarded administratively. With that, I'll turn it back over to the board, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any engineering choice or cost choice made for uncoated rock opposed to coated rock?
So we got a little bit of a sea change that we're implementing this year. So in the past several years, our chip seal program has consisted of a hot oil chip seal we've put down. So the ingredients going into that are a hot asphalt oil that's going down at a much higher temperature, we'll say 350 degree roughly temperature range. And then the aggregate material that's basically been run through an asphalt plant and coated with asphalt materials. This year, for a number of reasons, we're switching to an asphalt emulsion chip seal. So asphalt emulsion is a lower temperature asphalt oil that's mixed with water and emulsifiers. Whereas with hot oil, what we're relying on is the heat makes that asphalt oil workable, and then we're relying on the asphalt oil to cool in order for that binder to set up. Mm-hmm. With an emulsion, we're basically waiting for the water to evaporate out of the emulsion for that binder to set up. So it goes down at a much lower temperature. Several reasons we're making this switch this year. Big one's cost. The cost for our hot oil chip seals There's certainly a higher cost in that, at least in the materials. Certainly here in the last few years, we've seen some fairly large increase in costs for those materials and that product. Safety's been another concern. The dealing with the hot oil can pose some safety challenges for our crews that are working out on the road using hot oil. The material at a much lesser temperature, a much lower temperature rather, provides some safety benefits for our crews. Working with the hot oil in years past, it's kind of limited us to a shorter duration on the calendar for when we can implement, when we can put hot oil down on the roads. When we have cooler temperatures in the morning, we often have to start later. That's not as much of a concern with the emulsion chip seal. We've been doing emulsion chip seals a little bit on our road system over the last couple of years in a few spots, and we've also been delivering them for the city of Redmond over the last couple of years, and we've been happy with the results we've seen there. So for all those reasons and more, we've decided this year to make the switch to the emulsion chip seal. So with that, the aggregate, the price per ton for aggregate we see here is certainly substantially cheaper than the price for coated rock, because now that rock's not having to go through an asphalt plant. It's being crushed and washed and then delivered in that form.
Great. Well, very comprehensive answer. Thank you very much.
If there are no other questions, I'll move approval of chair signature of document number 2023-181, a notice of intent to award a contract for the supply and hauling of crushed uncoated rock for the 2023 chip seal project.
And I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So Cody, will this make it safer then when they're doing a chip seal, that you're driving near it, that it's not going to come up and damage your vehicle?
Well, there's always the concern with loose chips aggregate when we're doing a chip seal project. So I wouldn't say that it makes it any less of a chance that we're going to have loose aggregate on the job. Or certainly with this, there's going to be more of an effort to have sweepers on the road after the emulsion chip seal goes down. We will one other difference that will occur with this is shortly after, roughly within a week after the initial chip seal goes down, we'll be fog sealing these emulsion chip seals. So adds another step, but it's a relatively simple step. Doesn't require a full crew to be out there. It only requires one piece of equipment to put down that fog seal. So that will certainly help mitigate the loose chips that come up, in the couple weeks after a chip seal goes down.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. Next item, item 15, deliberations on the request to change a comprehensive plan designation of 59 acres from agricultural to rural residential exception area. Welcome, Audrey.
I was hoping they might be a little bigger. Thank you.
I brought reading glasses just for
I know,
this
I was like
situation.
going, well.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name's Audrey Stewart, and I'm an Associate Planner with Community Development. The item before you today is deliberations for the Markin Plan Amendment and Zone Change. So this is a request to change the zoning of the property from exclusive farm use to multiple use agricultural, and there's a concurrent request to change the comprehensive plan designation from agriculture to rural residential exception area. I have a couple slides I'll do with just a refresher on the background information for this file. Before we jump into that, I would like to acknowledge that one written comment was received this morning from Robert Curry regarding this application. This comment was received after the close of the record following the board hearing. Therefore, I would ask the board to confirm on the record that this comment will not be considered because it was not received during an open record period.
So is that a voting item or a consensus item, or what are we? 'Cause, yeah, so I haven't seen it, so.
I think it would be prudent to take a vote on it.
Okay, so with the information on a bit of input that was not on the record,
Correct. So it was a comment that was received. It was sent in via email, and it was submitted after the record closed. So the record for the board hearing closed on February 8th.
so should we mention it by name then, for a motion?
Is there a name or any identifier?
Maybe that's.
It was received by a member of the public named Robert Curry, and it was sent in this morning.
Today, March 1st.
Correct.
Okay.
So is that the will, or do you support that?
Procedures are procedures. So I don't think that we can consider it as part of this hearing.
So a motion stating that the Curry testimony is not part of the record.
Yes, so move that the Curry testimony received today via email on March 1st, 2023 is not part of the record, nor will be part of our decision-making.
Would you second that?
I'll second that.
So that's been seconded, so first formal action on this. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. So we've acknowledged that we're not acknowledging that input.
Thank you, Commissioners.
It doesn't mean that it's that input isn't
Well,
touching
it's part of the
on
record.
similar
Yeah.
themes to other input that we are considering.
As part of the record for this decision. Yep, okay.
Sounds good. I will run through some background on this file. So as I previously stated, this is a request for a plan amendment and zone change. This is file 247-22-000-353PA and then 354ZC. The subject property, it's located just east of Bend. It's 2 tax lots that make up approximately 59 acres combined. So the assigned address is 21495 and 21493 Bear Creek Road. The subject property is located just across Bear Creek Road from the City of Bend's urban growth boundary, and the current zoning of the property is exclusive farm use. The first of the 2 required public hearings was held before a hearings officer on September 6th. Following that, the hearings officer issued their recommendation, and that was mailed out on November 7th, 2022. We then held the second required hearing, which was before the board, and that hearing was held on January 18th. And then I'm back here today with deliberations. And following board deliberations, staff will go ahead and work to prepare that draft decision and ordinance for the board. There was a 21-day open record period following the board's hearing, so that was that hearing we held on January 18th. So during the new evidence period, which was that initial 7-day period, one member of the public submitted comments, and then Central Oregon Land Watch submitted comments. The applicant, through their attorney, then submitted comments during the rebuttal period and again for their final legal argument. And then that open record period officially closed on February 8th at 4 p.m. The deliberations process for today is that we will go one by one through the issue areas identified in the matrix, which is included in your board packet. There are questions and decision points identified for the board to vote on. If deliberations conclude today and a vote is rendered, staff will return with a draft decision for review and consideration of first reading. The other option is that the board can continue deliberations and vote to a future date. If you have any initial questions before we begin, I'm available. The link up on the screen has the project website, which is the full public record for this file. Okay, seeing no questions, I will go ahead and move on to this decision matrix. I want to start by noting that this decision matrix does not include every applicable approval criteria. Instead, these are the ones that were the subject of the most sort of analysis or comments, and these are the ones that were elevated for board consideration. The first of the 3 issue areas in this matrix are all very connected. They are all related to the definition of agricultural land from statewide planning goal 3, and are sort of different nuanced arguments regarding whether the property does meet that state definition of agricultural land. So the first is, does the subject property constitute agricultural land as defined by OAR 660-033-00201A? And so this definition from state statute essentially includes 3 components of what makes up agricultural land. One is class 1 through 6 soils as identified by the National Conservation Sciences, which you'll hear me refer to as the NCRS soil mapping. The second is land in other soil classes that is suitable for farm use based on soil fertility, suitability for grazing, climatic conditions, availability of water, existing land use patterns, technological and energy inputs required, and accepting farming practices. And then the third component is land that is necessary to permit farm practices to be undertaken on adjacent or nearby agricultural lands. So this is related to statewide planning goal 3, as well as a policy within our Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan, which is 223. And that policy in our comp plan is allow comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments, including for those that qualify as non-resource land, for individual EFU parcels as allowed by state statute, Oregon administrative rules, and this comprehensive plan. So the applicant, in addressing this, they provided some background on the history of farming on the property. They showed that there was an attempt to obtain a profit in money through farming the property, that it was unsuccessful, that they weren't even able to break even. And they assert that it's not feasible to obtain a profit in money due to the poor soil capability and then the high cost of inputs that are required. Oppositional comments pointed out the NCRS soil mapping for the property. They say that there is, in fact, a long history of farm use on the property. There was questions raised about the pond on the property, so whether that is a water impoundment that constitutes farm use or agricultural use under that state definition. And then there were also comments regarding the fact that the property owner had voluntarily relinquished some of their water rights. The hearings officer weighed both of these, and they found that the subject property does not meet the definition of Goal 3 agricultural land. And then one sort of key finding from the hearings officer is that the definition only looks at the current employment of land. And so the hearings officer found that the current employment of land is not for the primary purpose of growing or harvesting crops or other farm activities. So that was in response to comments about the history of farm use on the property. And then finally, the hearings officer responded to the arguments around the water impoundment on the property and found that that does not constitute a farm use. So the question before the board today is, does the subject property constitute agricultural land as defined by Goal 3? If no, the board can continue reviewing the applications and move to approve the plan amendment and zone change. If yes, so if the board does find that the subject property constitutes agricultural land, then the board must deny the application.
So as you started off, you said the first 3 items kind of go together, the first 3 decision points. When I looked at decision point 2, that kind of got me to decision point 1. So I'm just acknowledging that, as I read through this previously, 2 supported 1 more than 1 supporting 2, I guess. I guess just the logic for us to make decisions here.
You're correct, Commissioner. The first 3 are have some sort of differences in the arguments and the evidence that was presented, but they are very closely linked and might lead you to similar conclusions.
So as I say, for my fellow commissioners, when I look at the item, the second decision point, where the soil study provided by the applicant is sufficient to demonstrate the subject property consists of predominantly unproductive soils, I support the concept that, we do have a more detailed site-specific soil study acknowledged, which puts us in this, puts me in a spot of acknowledging that, saying, yes, the site's, study shows the property predominantly 7 and 8 soils for the purpose of farming. So I guess by saying that, I'm proceeding with yes on 1 and 2. So I just wanted to let you know that's how I got to that decision.
Okay.
This is for us to discuss.
You're saying yes on 1?
Well, yeah, I was acknowledging it, as I say, as soon as I read 2, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I do support this, set of information that gets to me to a conclusion of yes on number 2, which brings me back to number 1, which is this kind of the, as I say, it's a little different words, different definition of it, but I say the answer is no on number 1, as in, does the subject property, or no, the other way around, yeah. So it's yes on both of these. No, I'm sorry.
No, you
By
mean
the way it
no.
reads. Yeah, let me get the details here. Does the subject property constitute agricultural land? The answer is number 1, no. So as I say, I was looking at the first answer on both of those.
And that's because of the soils work done, where it said 61% was 7 and 8 soils. It was a much more sophisticated, which is what the hearings officer acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. And if the board prefers, we could start with issue area 2, which is looking at the soil study for the property.
Well,
It doesn't matter to me where we start. I mean,
Okay.
I would say it is important to consider that this property has been farmed, that it still retains some water rights, even though a significant portion of the water rights have been removed from the property. I really appreciate that the property owner actually has attempted to farm this land, has on a number of years attempted production on this land, and their experience that it was a struggle and it was unprofitable, I think is compelling. Compelling to me that this is, the legal terms are really difficult. I mean, but to answer the question, does the subject property constitute agricultural land under OAR 660-033-002011A? I would support a no on that question.
Which is, the position I came to also.
okay, so we're talking number 1 is a no, and I would
Yep. Absolutely.
concur with that.
Okay, thank you. So to confirm, I have 3 votes on no for issue area 1. Thank you. The second one that we've already jumped to a little
Yes.
is looking at the information that was provided regarding the soil capability of this property. So the key question is whether the soil study provided, which was a Order 1, so site-specific soil study, is sufficient to demonstrate that the subject property consists of predominantly Class 7 and 8 soils. And this is related, again, to that the state definition of agricultural land as well as statewide planning goal 3. So the applicant submitted information showing that this soil study was reviewed and approved by DLCD, that it was prepared by a certified soil scientist, and that they did follow standard procedure from the soil survey manual when they were preparing the site-specific soil study. The oppositional comments claim that the NCRS soil mapping still must be considered, There were also comments regarding whether the site-specific soil study was deficient and whether the conclusions that it reached were supported by its methodology. The hearings officer found that statewide planning goal 3 and OAR 660-033-00305 pretty explicitly allow the county to use a more detailed soil study when that's available. And so the hearings officer recommendation was that this site-specific soil study could be relied upon and that it was the best evidence available. Staff agrees with the applicant and the hearings officer on this issue. I also just want to note that the board has previously relied on these site-specific soil studies to sort of refine that NCRS soil mapping. So the question before the board today is, does the site-specific soil study, so that's that one that was specifically prepared by the applicant, show that the property is predominantly Class 7 and Class 8 soils? If yes, the board can continue reviewing the application and move to approve this. If no, the board may deny the application because the property meets the definition of Goal 3 agricultural land.
So I would go number 1, yes.
And I support that. That's where I started, yep.
I would support number 1 as well.
So this is just that point where I think, this is the concept of putting seeds in the ground, and even with artificial water, can somebody farm for a profit? Or grass in a field, alfalfa, beans, whatever. It's, any field crops. My point is, if somebody built greenhouses and brought in artificial soil and amendments and all this interesting stuff, you could farm on the moon, I guess, is where I'm going with this. So it's just interesting. The soil is, I support the soil scientist report.
I mean, you're going beyond the question at hand. But if we want to talk beyond the question at hand, then I would say that there are known practices to improve soil that are being employed in the region. When we heard about the meadery up by Sisters, I mean, a primary goal of that overall agricultural operation was to take meh soil and make it good, through a number of years of rest rotational grazing and other practices. Meanwhile, we also sit on, I believe, something in the range of 25,000 tons, 25,000 cubic yards of compost at our composting operation at Knott Landfill that is available for people who want it. So while the answer to this question is yes, that this soil survey demonstrated a certain quality of soil, that doesn't mean that that soil is unchangeably poor soil, for in perpetuity forever.
Kind of down the same path. Yeah.
So this, I guess I'd just like to say that this framework for justifying the reclassification of lands is problematic in my mind.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I shared my thought too. So maybe just go ahead and just read the issue area, and then we can have instead of reading the whole matrix, and then we'll go with questions if we can't get to a decision pretty quick.
That sounds good. So this is issue area 3, and this is the third one related to agricultural land. And this was pointing out that there was a previous land use application for a plan amendment zone change for a different property that was denied by the board despite finding the property was predominantly Class 7 soils. And so the key argument here is whether this does pertain to the subject application and whether this does indicate the subject property could be considered agricultural land.
So as I say, there's more words on this page, and we can read all those, so you don't need to have to read them all. Is that appropriate procedure, I guess, is my thought. She doesn't need to read everything out from this whole matrix here. Yeah, okay. So it's kind of the same question, does the subject property constitute agricultural land? And maybe this won't go well. I'm just trying to see if we can make it move along here.
Yes.
For this one, I can summarize the key points. So
Okay.
for this one, essentially the applicant said it was apples to oranges, that this was a application for a group of farm parcels, not one specific property with a soil study. They pointed to the subject property. There's this documented history of attempting to farm it that doesn't apply to this 2013 application that oppositional comments were citing. And so this one was actually submitted after the hearings officer decision was issued. So the hearings officer didn't weigh in on this specific one, but it's really closely linked to a lot of the findings the hearings officer made regarding statewide plan goal 3 and that definition of agricultural land. So this specific 2013 plan amendment zone change was not called out in the hearings officer recommendation, but a lot of their findings are still applicable. And they did find the subject property was not feasible to farm for the primary purpose of obtaining a profit.
Obtaining a profit, and especially if you have to buy fertilizer in today's world, it's doubled and tripled. So not only are you're paying for the water, but you're paying for everything else. So I can understand why it would not be profitable. I would, yes, I would agree with the no.
So as I say, it's kind of the same question, and I would go with that same conclusion. Selection 1, no.
Support that.
Okay.
Thank you. To confirm, I have three no's for that one, and we will move on to issue area 4. So this is also one looking at the applicability of a previous land use decision. So this was a request in 1980 to do a residential subdivision on the subject property. So this was back under the previous EFU 20 zoning of the property. And so at the time, the property owner applied to create this, what was called Moorview Acres subdivision. It was denied by the county, and included in that decision was reference to the potential to farm the subject property. And so comments were raised about, again, whether that was applicable to the subject application, and does that show that the subject property is in fact suitable for farm use. The hearings officer noted that this was for a different application type and that it did not make findings specific to plan amendment zone change criteria because it was not a request for plan amendment zone change. This prior land use decision also did not address that definition of Goal 3 agricultural land that comes from state statute, again, just because it didn't apply at the time because they were not requesting a zone change or a plan amendment. So staff agreed with that hearings officer finding. And again, just because that previous land use decision that's cited, it doesn't address the same approval criteria that we're looking at here. So the question before the board is, are the findings regarding suitability for farm use in the hearings officer decision for file CU 8042 and TP 596 relevant to this application? If no, the board can continue reviewing the application and move to approve this plan amendment zone change. If yes, the findings in the cited decision are sufficient to demonstrate the property is agricultural land, then the board may deny the plan amendment zone change, or the board can continue reviewing the application and move to approve the plan amendment zone change.
So for me, it's interesting that this land use history is out there, so the owner at the time was definitely looking to do something, a different path, different point in time, different terminology even. In support of the current application, I would go with, no, these findings are not relevant from the previous application.
And I would agree with that.
I was gonna try to wait until we got through this process to kind of pull up to the 90,000 foot level, but it's, as we go through these questions, it's pretty difficult not, my brain goes to the 90,000 foot level, so it's pretty hard not to go there. So I'd like to take a couple of minutes to just lay out. This property is, it's not great farmland. It has been farmed. It is, it has some agricultural potential. Because it's not great farmland, and because of its proximity to the urban growth boundary, I am supportive of moving these lands towards some kind of residential, higher density than you can, higher density of dwellings than you can find on EFU land. That said, the problem I have with this application is the timing or sequencing of that process, and I want to ask because it seems like this should be part of our state land use planning system, but I want to ask about the housing goal within our land use planning system, and whether it provides for sequencing of rezoning of property so that we get the maximum housing benefit out of changes in classification of lands. If this property is rezoned to RR10 or something like that, we get 5 units. If it's rezoned to that and it gets built out at that, we get 5 units of housing. If this property is rezoned within the framework of an urban growth boundary expansion, we could get 500 units of housing, and that is 500 units of housing that our community desperately needs. So the kind of nagging concern that I have about this application is that, that we could proceed with this comp plan amendment and rezone, and end up with, and that could support an urban growth boundary expansion and a whole lot of housing, or it could, if the city is not prepared to proceed with that in a timely fashion, it could result in just 5 units of housing, which then greatly complicate urban expansion at a future date. So I know that this is, I'm talking way outside the scope of the process we are looking at right now, but the potential angle, I wanted to ask about is, isn't there anything within the housing goal, within the state land use planning system, that helps us think about the sequencing of procedures like this?
Commissioner, for the record, Will Groves, your planning manager. This is a great question. It's interesting. It came up at a hearing last night as well. Typically cities in Oregon have some sort of approach to how they're going to grow in the future. You certainly don't want to see housing being placed in the line of critical infrastructure. You don't want to see parcelization occur in a way that precludes future development and urban densities along your border. if you want to see orderly urban development. And, there's a number of ways to approach that. That can be done through urban reserve areas, through overlay zones that cooperatively work between the jurisdictions to make sure that, these types of parcelizations don't occur in just the way that you're concerned about. This is definitely a known area of concern. What we've understood from the city at this point is because their demand is so urgent that they are moving towards another urban growth boundary expansion as their next step, as opposed to establishing an urban reserve area. And at least as my most recent discussions with the city is that would be a second step. So they would look to identify additional land to be in the city, and then as a subsequent process engage in these urban reserves, which just does just the sort of kind of protection and formatting that you would like to see here. To my understanding, there's nothing currently under the rules that that precludes this type of rezone or conditions it or causes it to have to happen in a particular way to ensure that it's in alignment with future potential city expansion. So this is something that would be a city-initiated process by which they'd come to us and ask us, "Dear county, please be careful with these lands. We might need them in the future. Would you consider that?" And to date, they have not. They're aware that this is something that could happen in the future, but it's sequentially a couple ticks down the line.
Yeah, in the staff memo, you cite that the City of Bend Planning did not provide any input on this, on this item in front of us right now. Okay.
And then I also just want to note, Commissioner, that the application before us today is for the plan amendment zone change. And so any future like land divisions, development, new uses on this property would require separate land use review. And at this time, they haven't indicated any future plans for the property.
Understood.
Yeah. So to confirm, Commissioners, on issue area 4, I had 2 votes no, so that the board can continue reviewing the application, and then I had 1 vote that was not received yet.
So I would vote no on this item, number 4.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention something. This is 59 acres, and Commissioner Chang, you just mentioned probably 500 units, but I have a single-wide manufactured home park bill on 57 acres, and we're actually only talking of doing 330 single-wides on 57 acres. So I don't know if it really translates over to 500 units or not, but I was just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Standard urban residential density for single-family home is 5 or 6 units per acre. And when you get to multifamily housing, sprinkling in even just some duplexes and triplexes, we can get up to 10 units per acre. And then if you want to get into multifamily housing, you could get into way more than 500 units in 59 acres. So 500 was just a simple conservative estimate of what could be accomplished there. I mean, if you look at the density in the Stevens Road tract, I'm sure that it adds up to more than 10 units per acre.
So that makes my single-wide bill that's being presented even more of a countrywide feel then. So hopefully I can get that through.
Okay, focusing on the matrix.
Well, this is actually ties in perfectly for the next issue area, which is proximity to Bend's urban growth boundary and the impact of this subject request, which is a plan amendment zone change on future urban growth boundary expansions. So this relates to statewide planning goal 3 and then Deschutes County Code 18136-020C1. And so this was a subject of several public comments regarding, speculation around future urban growth boundary expansions, where future growth would be directed, housing density, et cetera, was all brought up. And so the applicant cited several recent expansions of the Bend urban growth boundary in the sort of general vicinity, and did make a note in their findings that potentially approving this would make this property a better candidate for future inclusion in the Bend UGB. However, those sort of arguments around future expansion of the Bend urban growth boundary, they weren't tied to a specific approval criteria. So, for example, the hearings officer didn't make any findings on this because, again, it was not tied to an actual approval criteria. However, the hearings officer found that Goal 14, which is that statewide planning goal regarding urbanization, did not apply to the subject application. So, oppositional comments pointed out that adding new housing density in this area would be costly and inefficient, and they sort of raised questions about the future types of development you would see on this property if this plan amendment zone change was approved. And again, staff just wants to reiterate that the subject plan amendment zone change doesn't approve or review any future uses on the subject property. Anything in the future would be subject to separate land use review.
So one question, this might be for Will, but can urban reserve include resource lands? So if City of Bend had that urban reserve, that future urbanizable UGB discussion area with an agreement between the county and the city saying this is where we're going to go, can that include resource lands?
That's a great question. This is something I haven't worked on directly, so I'm speaking a little bit secondhand on this one. But my understanding is that there's a priority schedule for which those lands are brought in. And resource lands can be brought in, but they're brought in at a lower priority based on the relative viability of those lands. So,
And I'm just acknowledging during the last UGB effort, the City of Bend, they said, well, we can't even talk about this, this, and this. And that was all these resource lands on the edge of town, even though it's like, well, that may be the place to go in the future. So that's why, from Commissioner Chang, from your comments previous, I support our urban reserve effort for the City of Bend, but it's not up to the county to start that process. It'd be up to the city.
that's correct. And, as you're probably aware, most of these efforts, as I've understood, these sort of city-adjacent EFU to residential zoning is, the ultimate goal of these, as stated by the applicants, is to be ready for a UGB expansion. So they're now outside of resource land designation, so they're now a first priority to come into the city as opposed to secondary priorities that might have resource designations associated with it.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, just from a market incentive, profit motivation perspective, it's going to be a way better deal for these landowners to be brought into the UGB and to sell their property to urban expansion rather than doing rural residential. My concern is just that we do not know when the urban growth boundary expansion is going to occur, and it would be in my opinion, it would be very unfortunate for these lands to be developed at rural residential densities before that happens. If property owners get impatient, because it will greatly impede, urban expansion into those areas if that occurs.
And to a point you've raised previously, that risk increases as these properties are further from the UGB boundary. Those adjacent and coming into non-resource lands, presumably, pending infrastructure and other considerations, would be good candidates to come in. Those ones that, are increasingly far away from the UGB show greater risk that if, somebody did convert, wasn't accepted in an expansion, and now, maybe sitting there for a decade plus without development opportunity. You'd think that the economic forces might shift towards residential or rural development as opposed to urban.
Right. And to pick up on the idea of an urban area reserve, I know it's not our decision to initiate that, but if it is possible for us to offer substantial assistance in the process to encourage the city to consider taking that step, I would be supportive of us, offering substantial assistance. From a strictly from a property tax perspective, I actually think that that's a very good investment for the county, because when hundreds and hundreds of homes come online and are paying property taxes, it gives the county more resources to work with to accomplish our core services.
Well, following these deliberations, let's bring that up, because, I mean, I support the concept of, either sending a letter or doing some, notification somehow that, hey, let's get this started.
Yeah.
But let's work.
Yeah, but we're outside the application, but let's get this done, and then let's get to that. Let's do a letter like that.
So for item number 5, proximity to the Bend urban growth boundary, I absolutely agree that the proximity is interesting for all parties, but it's not part of the, land use, so the decision of the hearings officer defines it. So I'd say no, the board can continue to review. So the answer would be no.
Number 1, no.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't see approval criterion that we can use.
Yep.
Thank you,
We'll
Commissioner.
get that letter done after.
Well, it's some notification, yeah.
Moving on to issue area 6. So this is asking if the application requires an exception to statewide planning goal 14, urbanization. So essentially, an exception to the statewide planning goal would be required if this application did allow for urban levels of development on rural land. So the applicant is saying that what they're proposing is MUA 10 zoning, when our comprehensive plan and when the MUA 10 zoning designation was reviewed by the state, it was confirmed that this was rural in nature, that this is not urban levels of development. And so that even if the subject property did change its zoning to MUA 10, it still would be rural in nature. And so therefore, there doesn't need to be an exception to the statewide planning goal. Oppositional comments pointed out just the greater density you could achieve once it was zoned MUA 10, especially if they came in for something such as cluster development. The hearings officer found that Goal 14 does not apply. They agreed with the applicant's findings and some of the case law that the applicant cited, which essentially confirms that when you adopt that comprehensive plan and when you create that zoning, the county at that time has to demonstrate that it's rural in nature and that this application is not the avenue to revisit that. So the question before the board today is, does Goal 14 urbanization apply to the subject application? And so the two paths for this is, if yes, so if the board finds that Goal 14 urbanization does apply, then you need to determine whether it's been satisfied or not. So if it does apply and it's been satisfied by the applicant, then you can adopt these alternate findings that the hearings officer included and approve the application. If you find that it applies and it has not been satisfied, then the board would deny the application because it does require that goal exception. On the other hand, if the board finds that no, Goal 14 urbanization does not apply, then you can continue reviewing the application and move to approve this application.
So this fits real well into the conversation we were having. But yeah, I mean, I don't come to the conclusion that this is going to be urbanizable because it's not even in an urban reserve. If it was in an urban reserve, that would be a different conversation, but that's, as I say, an effort of the city, and it would be, if it was approved, to be in an urban reserve area. So I would conclude number 2, no.
Following what the hearings officer did.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that.
But it's on the edge, though. I mean, we all
definitely
know
on
that,
the edge.
yeah.
So if 2 commissioners say number 2, no, and 1 commissioner says 1A, satisfied by alternate findings, we still proceed regardless.
Correct.
Yes.
And those alternate findings are included in the hearings officer recommendation, which is in your board packet, and I also have some copies if you want to review those.
And, if it was 2 to 1, then the majority decision would be 2 anyway, but I would say 1A, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And then, as I say, for the willingness of us to communicate with the city of Bend, saying if this was a UGB, this would get more clarity, that, I mean, kind of gets to that same conclusion.
And then we need to, I'm already jumping ahead to the letter,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this letter needs to reference all of these comp plan amendment rezones that are being pursued on the east side, on the immediate east side of the city, because we're talking about hundreds of acres, I believe, when you add it all up.
The last issue in our decision matrix, this one comes pretty directly from Deschutes County Code. So this is 18-136-030, and so this is the rezoning standards. And it says that there has to have been a change in circumstances since the property was last zoned or a mistake was made in the zoning of the property in question. So the applicant says, yes, there's very clearly a change in circumstances. That is the new sort of better, more refined soil information that we have. It's the history of unsuccessful farming attempts on the property. It's although land use approvals, including urban growth boundary expansions and annexations that have happened surrounding the property, including the property immediately to the north across Bear Creek Road. And also, the board has approved other applications for plan amendment zone change requests and found that this criteria was met. On the other hand, the oppositional comments essentially say the soils of the property have not changed since it was originally zoned, and therefore there has not been a change in circumstances. The hearings officer adopted the applicant's findings, and they found that NCRS soil mapping was imprecise and that we now have better, sort of more site-specific data, and that is new information. So the question before the board today is, has there been a change in circumstances since this property was zoned? If yes, the board can continue reviewing the application and move to approve this, and if no, the board may deny the application because it does not meet this criteria.
I would agree that the NRCS soil mapping is pretty coarse scale, and that getting a site-specific soil study, subsequent to that, does change the circumstances.
I'd say this is a interesting, kind of legal argument for the whole big picture of land use and zoning since the beginning. So I will support the hearings officer conclusion there, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, I believe probably the applicant had to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in order to actually do a soil study on those 59 acres. And I realize that some people can't afford that, but they did spend the money, and it did show, that we have a much more of a sophisticated measure of the what they can actually grow, and they've tried for decades. So I would agree with the hearings officer that we can continue reviewing.
So we got through the matrix and the decisions presented. And good discussion through that process too. So this is
And so the board can decide to either continue deliberations to a different date or to take a vote. And if the board does decide to take a vote today, the wording of a proposed motion is included in your agenda packet.
So it looks like the conclusion I'm coming to is we're supporting this zone change application, plan amendment, zone change.
Nothing in that matrix indicates otherwise.
Yep. Okay.
Right.
So is there a motion then? And the recommended
move-
motion's a whole. Oh, there we go.
Is it over here? Yes.
No, that's fine. Yep.
The board moves to approve the plan amendment and zone changes for file number 247-22-000-353-PA and 247-22-000-354-ZC.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Good process.
And then, just immediately top of brain coming off of this, I would like us to initiate a communication with the City of Bend, indicating a desire to partner with them to ensure that all of these hundreds of acres that are being where comp plan amendment and rezone applications are being sought, that we coordinate on thinking about how to get the maximum housing opportunities for our community out of those applications.
So yeah, let's finish that up. I want to follow up. Anything else?
No, so staff will coordinate to prepare that draft board decision and that draft ordinance, and then schedule a date for the first reading.
So then I'll acknowledge we've voted in support of approval of this application, but the final decision will be the piece of paper that we also vote on.
Correct, there will be an ordinance.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Chang, back to what you were saying. I support the concept of offering support to the city of Bend, advocating for urban reserve effort. So I don't know what that means exactly.
An urban growth boundary proposal could include a few hundred acres on the east side of Bend. So if they want to do an urban growth, if they just want to do an urban growth boundary expansion that addresses all of these comp plan amendment rezone areas, that would be a satisfactory approach to me as well. So I don't want to kind of prescribe that they have to do a reserve, but maybe this letter can just kind of outline either through urban growth boundary expansion proposal or an urban area reserve approach. We would like to coordinate on these hundreds of acres of comp plan amendment and rezone applications.
Well, so I think of urban reserve as 50 years and a UGB urban growth boundary specifically as 20 years. So, and we've already seen this pattern in the city of Bend. Some excited players came to us and said, hey, we got a great idea on the west side. We're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to step out to some the public lands in rural densities. So it's really just having that big picture look. Urban reserve is what I'm referring to. Where could or would it go if it was or wasn't resource land? Because the urban growth boundary 20-year plan, it was a hard stop. We're not talking about this farmland out here. So I'm just throwing out more information here why I would advocate for Deschutes County asking the city to do urban reserve discussions, knowing they're already going to do urban growth boundary discussions. So, but it's just starting the conversation.
I don't know that they are. I mean, I don't know when they are going to do urban growth boundary discussions. I mean, with with some of the state guidelines, coming down the pipe, it's unclear. It's really unclear when this UGB process is going to start. So, I don't think we can just assume that they're working on a UGB right now, and the kind of additional ask is just, hey, can you look at an urban area reserve as well? I think we need to, not assume that an urban growth boundary expansion is coming in the near future. Ask for the forward-looking planning that's necessary, whether that be the UGB expansion or a urban area reserve or whatever.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Kind of, yeah.
Would the board like staff to draft a memo on behalf of the board for consideration?
I would.
Yeah, at this point, we started a conversation, so we'll see where that goes.
And Will, would you take the lead on that or coordinate with Peter? And do you have enough information to get it started?
Yes, Commissioners, thanks for the request. Definitely catching that ball. We'll initiate some conversations with our partners over at the City of Bend to make sure our information is up to date and explore with them what sort of options might be helpful and move towards a letter from the board on that regard. Something else that I know that some jurisdictions use, and I need to do some research to see if it's appropriate, is sometimes the county could put an overlay zone on property within a certain distance of an urban growth boundary that would, say, for example, protect future infrastructure corridors or limit parcelization within a certain distance of a boundary. So it may be there's a what I would call a low rent version of trying to protect these lands outside of the heavy lift that an urban reserve might bring. But we need to.
I wouldn't even know about. Yeah.
That's something we need to explore. We'll take a look into that.
Prohibiting parcelization, how would that interact with these comp plan amendment zone change applications? They're separate things.
So speaking very hypothetically here and having not done the legal research on it, the concept would be that if you were to develop an overlay zone, say within X feet or X miles of a urban growth boundary, you would, these things would come presumably into the RR10 or MUA10 zone, but those zones in turn would have a limitation down at the end of the chapter that said, hey, if you're within X distance of an urban growth boundary, then thou shalt communicate with the adjacent city to make sure that your new parcels, if you want to do a land division in the rural land, you need to communicate with the jurisdiction to confirm that their infrastructure corridors in the future would be preserved as part of that division, or that some limitations on the types of parcelization that could occur. So for example, right now, somebody with 100 acres who'd gone through one of these processes could make 10-acre lots, which would be relatively difficult to reformat into city configurations. We do have a cluster subdivision where you could, at a higher density, make smaller lots under rural development and then leave a large open space parcel that under the cluster rules is specifically designed for upzoning once it comes into a city. So there are ways to protect some of this land from parcelization that would preclude or complicate future urban development. We don't have a specific example of this that I'm aware of, so this will be something I'll explore as we circle back to you with ideas for a communication to the city.
And really importantly, this concept would open lines of communication between the city and these property owners that are outside the city.
And
Interesting.
if you don't know, we've got a proposed letter to the governor through Oregon Emergency Management in support of, some kind of possible future managed camping option at the perimeter of a UGB, which is that same area we're just talking about.
Yeah, we'll help review the letter that.
But I'm just saying, look at that overlap. That's interesting.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'll follow up on that.
Well, I just wanted to say something,
Please.
Perhaps on a different point of view, but look what happened in Boulder, Colorado, when all those homes were built together. I believe there was a tremendous fire a couple years ago, and it just went house to house to house because they were so close together. And the view from the east side of Bend is spectacular, and I would hate to lose that with the joy of moving here, and then you can't even see your view because we've so highly condensed it. Now, I realize that that's not what the state is saying, but I just see that it's another unintended consequence when you so compact all these dwellings. That fire in Boulder was pretty horrific, and it was like, I believe it was in December, and it just flew through communities. It was a wind-driven, and you never know when the wind here is going to blow.
Wasn't Boulder, but not very far away.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Great follow-on item. At this time, item number 16, second reading of an ordinance for housekeeping amendments.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Kyle Collins, Associate Planner. As the Chair just pointed out, I am here today to discuss the second reading of ordinance number 2023-001. This is in relation to our kind of semi-annual housekeeping amendments. The board held a hearing on these proposed amendments 2 weeks ago, February 15th. ultimately recommended approval of those amendments and closed both the oral and written records, and then held a first reading of this ordinance. So this would be kind of the final step in adopting these amendments. Ultimately, they'd come into effect 90 days after signatures, assuming that it is approved today, and they would take effect on May 30th of this year. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Kyle.
Of course.
I think we went through these housekeeping amendments in pretty significant detail 2 weeks ago.
During the hearing, yeah.
So I have no questions at this point.
Okay.
So I move approval of second reading of ordinance number 2023-001 by title only.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. At this time, second reading of ordinance number 2023-001, an ordinance amending Title 17 subdivision and partition ordinance, Title 18 zoning ordinance, Title 22 procedures ordinance of the Deschutes County Code, and Title 23 Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan to incorporate changes to state law and provide clarification of existing regulations, procedures, and policies. Is there a motion for adoption?
I move adoption of ordinance number 2023-001.
And I second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And chair votes yes.
All right.
Go, been adopted.
Easy. Thanks, Commissioners.
Whoa.
Next item. Item number 17, second reading for ordinance for ham radio text amendments, amateur radio.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Nicole Mardell, Senior Planner with Deschutes County Community Development. So very similar to the previous item. Today you're considering adoption of second reading of ordinance 2023-004. This pertains to our amateur radio facility amendments, so streamlining essentially the process. So the board held the public hearing on February 15th, closed the record, and conducted first reading approving the amendments. So today is that final step in the process. Similarly, effective date would be 90 days after date of adoption, so May 30th. That's all I have for you.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move approval of second reading of ordinance number 2023-004 by title only.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. At this time, this is second reading of ordinance number 2023-004 by title only, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 18, Chapter 18.116.290 to streamline establishment of amateur radio facilities.
With that, I'll move adoption of ordinance number 2023-001.
I'll second it.
Just clarify, I think it should be 2023-004.
Oh,
Yes, it should
I'm
be.
sorry, I'm just reading off of it.
Yep.
Move adoption of ordinance 2023-004.
And you'll second it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Nicole.
Nice to see you too.
So glad you were back. You know that.
Okay, so we have other items, a couple different letters of support.
Yeah, and one more congressionally directed spending request that where the applicant is seeking a letter of support from the full Board of Commissioners coming from Neighbor Impact for federal funds for well repair and replacement. So continuing the work that we were able to pass through state funding for to Neighbor Impact with to help people with help all the folks whose wells are going dry. They're going to seek $2.5 million from a specific. I'll look up the federal program that they're seeking the funds through.
Well, that's, yeah, so that I'm sure they've even done their homework, said it congressionally designated through existing funding sources, so good for them, yeah.
Yeah, they did try to identify the channel, the program it would come through, the HUD Economic Development Initiative. That's their best guess at the appropriate federal program. And one of the things that got them thinking about this was that requests from Brandon Persinger from AOC that went out to all the counties. It felt like it went out to all the counties except us, mentioning what Deschutes County had gotten from the legislature, and encouraging counties to get their numbers together and seek funds from the legislature. So
For wells, you're saying?
for more
That fund.
yeah, to deal with declining groundwater levels around the state. So when I got that notice that kind of mentioned Deschutes County as an example, but I felt like was encouraging other counties to get their numbers together, I sent it over to Neighbor Impact and just said, even though they didn't specifically ask for our numbers, it would probably be good for us to send some in. And they started trying to quantify the demand. And so this $2.5 million federal request that they're thinking about, in addition to making a state request, it's a tri-county look, not just Deschutes County.
I had been giving well numbers. I did call up all the well drillers in Deschutes County and had given them like 1.5 million for North and South Deschutes County. I know we got 585,000 the year before, but definitely that was reaching out to all the well drillers.
So we had some prepared letters, and now we have another idea here, so go ahead.
Commissioner DeBonne, for the record, Whitney Hale, Deputy County Administrator.
Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager.
As a follow-up to the board's discussion on Monday related to congressionally directed spending requests, we have 6 letters for the board's consideration this morning. 2 are the letters that you discussed on Monday related to the City of Redmond and the Lapine Rural Fire Protection District's requests. We also have letters for your review and consideration from ODOT, Neighbor Impact, and Heart of Oregon, and
Mosaic
Medical. Oh, excuse me, my math was off.
They want to be known as Mosaic Community Health Now, I believe.
So Jen and I were able to tag team on these letters, which was very helpful given the tight turnaround. These are due on Friday, so we're going to go ahead and pass these out for the board's review, and then we can walk through them. Commissioner Chang, did you?
The Neighbor Impact one, is it for this well deepening, or is it for even something else?
So they didn't ask for a specific amount in their letter, but it looks like it's for 30 well loans over the past 24 months, and they don't have enough funding to hit all those or to fund all those loans.
Yeah, sounds like the same thing.
We'll go ahead.
Neighbor Impact is doing a lot of stuff, so I just want to make sure we.
Here it comes, all the letters.
These are the 3, Neighborhood, Mosaic,
Lori Chavez DeReamer's name spelled wrong. Who was in charge? Did you do that? Okay, yeah. It's DeReamer, not
We'll get that fixed. Sorry,
Okay.
autocorrect.
That's
Yeah.
why we're taking a look at it.
I know, I'm like, okay, if we're sending it to her.
Well, I mean, in all this, we actually don't even know yet whether Congressman Benson and Congresswoman Chavez DeReamer are accepting congressionally directed spending requests for this session. So that, to the extent that we come up with a number of letters that the full Board of Commissioners supports, or that at least my fellow commissioners support, you can be talking on that side of the aisle to members of Congress about the potential value of congressionally directed spending requests.
And I will just note, with almost all of these draft letters, we were provided samples from the respective organizations that have projects in play. So there are some, these are not consistent in the way that they're addressed, and/or there are some other variations throughout them, but we tried to adapt where necessary, but often this language is coming straight from the requesting agency. So if the board would like, we can start with the City of Redmond and Lapine Rural Fire Protection District, since those were the letters that we discussed on Monday, and then kind of segue into the other accompanying letters. I'm going to go ahead and pause and give you some time to digest those two letters, and staff's happy to take any feedback you may have.
I guess to that question of, I mean, one question I have overall is, some of these are only addressed to Senator Merkley and Senator Wyden. I mean, to the extent that my fellow commissioners are supportive of these letters, I'm wondering if they should be addressed to our full congressional delegation for the county.
I think the call was from the senator's office, though, wasn't it? Merkley's office is kind of starting this, being on the Appropriations Committee.
Sure, but does that mean you want to take Benson, Chavez, DeReamer's names off of the other letters?
No, I just have a response back from Congressman Chavez DeReamer, and no guarantees, but absolutely feel free to make a pitch, and it will be passed on. So, and I'm sure Congressman Benz's office would say the same thing. I mean, he happens to be a water expert and deals with it on a daily basis.
Well, and it sheds light on community-supported asks for projects. No matter what happens here. So, yeah, that's fine. I'm supportive of including congressional offices.
So specific to the Lapine fire letter, this is a condensed version of the letter that you saw on Monday, which was really written from the chief. And so I tried to sort of slim this down and take out some of there was a lot of detailed information in the original letter. So this is kind of a higher level version of their request. And then the City of Redmond's letter was written from the perspective of a supporting agency, and so there are no changes from the draft that you reviewed on Monday for that.
So I'm supportive of the letter supporting Lapine Fire as written. I don't see anything jumps out at me. Oh, yeah, okay.
And you could add Congressman Benz. I believe that's his district also.
That's great. Commissioner, is there any feedback from you related to the Lapine fire letter? Does that?
Yeah, my name's on it. That's fine.
Perfect. We'll move that one forward. Transitioning to the letter for the City of Redmond's wastewater treatment plant. They're requesting $2 million. Any thoughts or feedback on that draft?
Is there a word different than exciting project?
Yeah, we can definitely wordsmith that.
Like,
look up something.
Maybe, worthwhile, it's youth-focused, whatever. I mean, they're talking about spending money. Exciting isn't something that grabbed you a bit more.
Okay.
Well, and historically, cities really move forward when there's state or federal investments in infrastructure like this. This is foundational, having sewer, so or a wetlands complex for wastewater disposal. However, there's terminology matters sometimes. So I'm supportive of this letter. So it's just to whom it may concern at this point. Did you acknowledge that you want to change it to the
Yeah. We'll
congressional
reply
offices?
Consistently on all letters that the
Yep.
board is supportive of sending.
And then will we send it to Chavez DeReamer's office? I think she's in that District 5 there.
Uh-huh.
You support that?
Yes.
And do you support that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One, we have talked or I mentioned in the past that the bipartisan infrastructure law contains a massive amount of funding for infrastructure projects such as this. So I think it would actually strengthen the city of Redmond's argument if they said we will be applying for competitive funds from the bipartisan infrastructure bill opportunities, and we're asking for this.
Yeah. Well, that's a great idea, because.
But I don't want to put that in there in this letter if they're not actually doing that. So I mean, maybe you could check with them, and if it's okay with all my fellow commissioners, and if they are indeed seeking those funds, and then seeking the CDS request on top of that, then I think it would strengthen the request for them to say that.
Because, then everybody can do their homework. Oh, if we qualify for this, why do that? So that'll be good for everybody to, once again, it sheds light on the topic.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll reach out to City of Redmond staff and then adjust accordingly based on what we find out before we put these out for signature. Transitioning to ODOT, the board might have seen an email come through late yesterday from Chris Doty related to this request. ODOT is going to submit a request related to multi-use path segments between Bend and Redmond, and the letter that's before the board acknowledges significant pedestrian presence along the shoulders of 97. And so they've requested the board's consideration of this letter of support related to this request for this project.
I'm in the same spot where I support these, all these asks, but, maybe the format of letter, I guess, regarding letter of support, so just mention their project.
Do we know with this path, whether they're talking about on the east side or the west side of 97?
I don't, but it's something that we could follow up and find out.
If they are thinking about the west side of 97, then we could also mention that we are contemplating developing a new county park.
Or at least needing other traffic improvements, or,
a mile and a quarter north of the city of Cooley Road, that it would be awesome to have a multimodal path to.
I would support saying that the county may have other interest,
More
generic,
it's
is my thought.
there's tremendous value in the project regardless, but we could demonstrate that we have a particular stake in having paths, which I think is a great idea.
Access to county lands.
Sure.
I mean, just something
Sure,
a little more generic.
you could be more generic,
than-
that's fine.
That's all. Okay.
Oh, and the mobile home park.
There you go.
Because they're right together.
Perfect. We'll add that sentence in and clean up this formatting a little bit as we
Yeah.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah, once we get
More
they'll all look about the same. So.
Yep. Okay, Jen, over to you.
Great.
Over to you.
Moving on, I think the first letter on there is the neighborhood impact, or neighbor impact letter. We received this morning. Again, they're requesting support for congressional directed funding to support their well loan program for low and moderate income households.
Try to just format it to one page is my first thought.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
Pull some stuff out.
One
making
page
sure
would
it's
be
clear. Yeah.
Drink the fine.
What was that?
I mean, this is all good, you know, the
it
what's
is
in here is all good stuff.
So yeah, that middle, as Central Oregon's Community Action Agency, I like that, all that content.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good stuff.
I can remove a sentence or two.
But that's what it is, it's stuff. And let's go to the facts so
get it
that
on.
people actually read it. Yeah, when you have so many, yeah. You want to add an attachment or something,
So-
but yeah, nobody's going to read it.
So, yeah,
Yeah, maybe the last paragraph could be shrunk to, we enthusiastically support Neighbor Impact's request for our CDS.
so yeah, just, yeah,
Save
there
us
you
a
go,
couple
just
lines.
format it to one page, we all agree.
Great.
And sending it to the congressional offices, both of them.
All of it, yeah. I mean, and my one other question would be, is Neighbor Impact seeking letters from Crook and Jefferson counties as well?
I don't know if we've received that. Let's take a peek.
We should all be pulling together for this, especially since, you know, the drought conditions, I suspect, are, you know, in talking to Neighbor Impact, they were saying that the needs in the other counties are going to be substantial in the next couple of years.
We can reach out to them and see.
Yeah,
if
in the
there's-
original email that they sent, it's not clear, just that a letter of support from Deschutes County would be helpful.
I mean, and if it's useful for one of us to reach out to the boards of commissioners from the other counties, then I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did mention the other two counties in the letter, but unclear if they're, so we'll look into that. Great. We'll incorporate those changes. I think the next letter up there is Mosaic. If I have my order right.
And Commissioner Chang, thank you for your starting, well, really your entire letter related to this topic, so that.
I mean, they gave me a draft first.
Okay, well, just to give credit where credit's due.
This would be a hard one to compress to one page.
That's fine, if that's, you know, the content you've worked already. So I support this letter, and then just formatting as the others.
This is shorter than the draft that Mosaic.
Yeah, it got shorter, okay, good.
I can promise you that.
Commissioner
Right, so we
Dare.
support the letter for Mosaic.
Yes.
Great. And then the next one, the last one here is the Heart of Oregon Corps. They're requesting $2 million specifically for congressionally directed spending for a new campus in the Redmond area.
Oh, I already said to change the word exciting.
We'll do a scrub.
I thought we already did that.
Yep, and so I support this letter, and as I say, they're already working towards this campus, so capital will really help at this point. And so this is a moving project, it's happening. So,
Yeah. Excited about
Okay, perfect. So I know that the city of Redmond has an earlier deadline than the others, I believe, so we'll try to get that out for, I think it's probably just in their planning for how they'll submit, but we'll try to get that before you for signature today, because that needs to get back to them by the end of business today. But with the other letters, we'll make the changes that we need to make and hopefully get them back to the board for signature either today or tomorrow.
Great.
Kim, do we need, could you help with a motion that might
You're asking
encompass all of what the board
Earmark
just
funding
discussed?
for 2.5 million, and he said it's Tri-County.
Yeah, if you want to,
Thanks.
if you want to propose language for us, I can say so moved.
Yep.
So we'll just move adoption of the letters drafted by staff for congressionally directed spending that are dated March 1st of 2023.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second?
Any other discussion? Seeing that, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes.
And that was Judge Crawford, and he's calling over there right now because he has not heard about this.
To Neighbor Impact?
Yeah.
Good, okay.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
And another other item, letter. So we had talked about this on Monday. This is the letter through OEM to the governor. As I say, a couple of the substantive pieces on here, we're mentioning managed camping options must be explored. I'd say maybe explored, so just maybe the words there. And then it's also substantively asking for within 1 mile of a UGB. And then it says excluding high-value farmland, productive forest, and all state land use qualified protected resources. So is that?
I had questions about the way we described what was allowed in what zoning. Yeah. I got it. But Kim cleared those up for me, so I'm comfortable with this language in this letter. I guess the one other thing I would ask is if we are interested in the Fort Thompson property being considered, being an opportunity, whether we should ask for more than a mile. I'm pretty sure that's 1.25 miles. So.
Well, yeah, maybe we don't say a mile. Just say within rural.
I'm not comfortable with that. I think it's important for the governor to understand that this is fairly tightly bound to urban areas because putting
Go ahead and
people.
propose a distance then,
Putting
that's
people.
fine.
Yeah, okay.
2 miles, 1.25 miles,
Mile and a half. How about 1.5 miles?
So now you're talking
Well, I mean,
about.
but the question is, I mean, we are, the county is the landowner of the Fort Thompson property. My question to you two is, do we want to explore that as a managed camp, safe parking opportunity or not? If not, then I'm happy leaving it at 1 mile, because the Gales Brothers property, that is well within 1 mile.
The what property?
The Gales property, the one out east behind Grace Presbyterian Church.
And our property on Highway 126 is within the Redmond. It is within the city of Redmond, so we're okay there.
Oh, yeah, and yeah, it's at the.
The 10
yeah.
acres that it's surrounded by are 1,000 acres around us, so we can yell it ourselves.
It's not the urban reserve, it's within the UGB.
Yep, in the UGB.
Good, Nick.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's interesting to be on this side of the table again, now that I'm.
Joining us.
What are you doing over there?
Whatever the distance it is helpful to have to include the urban reserve, because that could be unclear. But if it's in the UGB, it's clear it will be allowed, but if it's beyond, the urban reserve could still be a question mark. So whatever language we decide and the distance, it's 1 mile, 1.5 miles, 2 miles, whatever it may be, that's great, because that will fully include the county-owned property in the urban reserve on the east side of Redmond.
Would it be useful to specifically say, give 1.5 miles from the UGB or the urban area reserve boundary? Or is it okay to just say, UGB plus 1.5 miles?
Yeah, it could be, well, it could be, that's a good point. It could be 1.5 miles within an approved urban growth boundary or urban reserve area. And then it would cover both.
So, yeah, 1.5 miles is fine.
I would prefer to leave it at 1 mile. Yeah. I don't.
Well, that's what answers that question, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Wait, so the consensus was to leave it at 1 mile?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to look at the Fort Thompson property without full support of the board.
Here we go.
Didn't we just spend, aren't we spending money on getting that designed? Didn't we just allocate a huge contract for that property? Yeah. So I'd like to leave this at a mile.
Just a feasibility study for that and a number of other sites.
So is this a, yeah, so let's leave it at 1. Do you want to change words about UGB and urban reserve? And/or urban reserve, just so we can say, we mentioned urban reserve. So let's put and/or urban reserve, because they're not everywhere. And then the word must. So while we share the governor's desire to reduce unsheltered homelessness, we recognize that doing so will take some time, and in the meantime, managed camping options must be explored. Is must the word we want to say there?
I think must is appropriate. I think this letter is about managed camp, safe parking type options, not broader than that.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. There we go. So is there approval for this letter?
There's one change, urban growth boundary to and/or urban reserve. That's the consensus change that I noted.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So move the letter being sent to Governor Tina Kotek, drafted February 29th, 2023.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Okay. On the other items?
I mean, just kind of tied to that, I would like to ask whether it still makes sense for us to explore a safe parking ordinance at the county level.
At Monday's meeting,
simultaneously.
Nick brought that up, and the board agreed to have a work session on that. So staff will schedule that for discussion with the board.
Yeah, we'll plan to schedule a work session with the board March 22nd or that next week, but certainly we'll bring something back to the board in late March. By late March, yes.
Anything else, Commissioner Dare?
Well, it was good to see that Bend went from 8 to 12 in their safe parking program. I saw the mayor's letter, and I'm thinking, okay, that's great. So, yeah, if we can do our part too.
Anything else?
Nothing else for other items, although there is an executive session on
Okay.
labor.
I mean, one quick report back for Commissioner DeBonne. Both Commissioner Dare and I testified on Senate Bill 644, the -2 amendment this morning, and it seemed like there was significant support from Senators Findley and Knope, as well as at least some of the members of the Senate Natural Resources Committee for moving forward with that -2 amendment that will allow people to move forward with ADUs on this with this presumptive approach.
Great. Good. Well, I was glad that it happened before our board meeting even. So
It was wonderful. They changed the agenda order
Yeah.
for us, I believe. And, yeah, Doug was very happy with it. And, you know, with the two senators that both represent Deschutes County being part of the bill, it looks good. And Commissioner Heather Buck from Lane County was there testifying too, that it will really help the east side of Lane County if we can get this going. So it seems like they only started this in 2017. The realtors were there testifying for us too, the Oregon realtors, and he said it started in 17, so now we're in 23. And we're almost there.
Almost. Okay, so this is other items. Chris Doty, thanks for joining us. We saw you in person just a while ago.
Oh, hello, Commissioners.
Hello.
I was just attempting to plug in during the conversation about the ODOT letter.
Oh, okay.
And got here a little late to the party, but caught the end of it, that Whitney's going to make some changes and get those back to you. I did want to reiterate that what ODOT's doing with their proposal here is attempting to serve underserved populations per the request of ODOT leadership, and putting these forward for congressional delegated spending to serve the existing mobile home parks on the east side of 97 north of Bend, on the west side of 97 south of Redmond. So those are the specific
Okay.
projects ODOT is attempting to gather enough information on to present for a request.
Great.
And someday these west and east paths will connect somewhere in the middle?
That certainly it feeds part of their goal of providing that connectivity. I'm not sure if I might be confusing Bob Townsend's email with the letter, but it's mentioned in there somewhere, and I forwarded you blank copied you on an email yesterday afternoon that kind of provided a little more detail, I think. But yes, that is their goal, is to provide that full connectivity between the two communities, either a path down one side or crossing at some place.
Great, thank you for more information.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I know Commissioner Lori Chavez-DeRemer is actually asking for help for 97, and it definitely needs help between Redmond and Madras. So hopefully she'll be able to, she's on a transportation committee.
Okay, so that's it for our regular items. We do have an executive session.
Chair DeBonne?
Yes.
We do need to take a short break to transition the AV system, so we can go into executive session. At that time, the board may want to, if they're inclined to do a quick interview, I know we have the media waiting.
Yep.
So just a suggestion.
I agree with you. So yeah, we'll take a break and reconvene moments from now, but we'll possibly make ourselves available for the media. So at this time, we'll adjourn the regular meeting with that executive session to follow.